There are moments in life when silence isn't just golden, it's vital, and none more so than when we are angry, that surge of heat that rises through your chest, the tightening of your jaw, the flood of words that feel like they're begging to be said. In those moments, silence becomes not just wise but powerful. You see, when you speak in anger, you're no longer speaking from your values or your vision, you're speaking from a wound, and wounded words once released rarely find their way back home. They fly out with razor edges cutting through trust, leaving scars on people you might actually care about. You might win the moment. Sure, you might even feel justified. But in the aftermath, when the dust settles and the adrenaline fades, you're left with the echo of things you never truly meant. Let me tell you something I've learned, not from books, not from classrooms, but from life itself. The strongest individuals, the ones who lead with clarity and influence, they don't let anger write their script. They know when to bite their tongue, when to breathe. Instead of break, when to retreat inward and wait. That's not weakness, that's power in its highest form. Power over self. I've seen empires fall and relationships crumble simply because someone couldn't hold back a few words that should have never been spoken. That split-second choice to react or to remain silent can shape your future. It can preserve your dignity. It can even save your dreams. Because once something is said in rage, no amount of apologies can unsay it. People remember how you made them feel, and anger rarely makes people feel loved, respected, or safe. Now, I'm not saying don't feel angry, you're human, you're supposed to feel, but anger is like fire uncontrolled. It burns everything in its path. Controlled, it can light the way. So what do? You pause, you breathe. You give yourself a moment, because silence is a space where wisdom gathers before words are born. It is in that pause that you regain your strength. It's in the silence that your higher self has a chance to speak softly at first, but with clarity. That anger never offers. That pause might last a few seconds or a few hours, but however long it takes, it is a choice, a deliberate decision to rise above the moment, to protect your future self from regret. You might think that silence makes you seem weak, passive, or avoidant, but real silence, purposeful silence, is none of those things. It's intentional, it's mature, it's the silence of a person who knows their worth, who doesn't need to prove themselves in the heat of battle. It's the silence of a mind that refuses to be ruled by emotion and instead chooses discipline. Let me remind you, every word you say in anger is a brick. You're either building a wall or a bridge. When you lash out, you build walls, separating yourself from understanding, from connection, from progress. But when you stay silent, you give yourself the chance to build a bridge later, one made of reason, empathy, and strength. I have sat in rooms where leaders lost the respect of their teams because they couldn't control their tempers. I have seen friendships fade, marriages fray, and opportunities vanished, all because someone let anger choose their words. Don't be that person. Don't be remembered for the things you said in rage, but for the strength you showed in restraint. Anger passes, the moment will pass, but the memory of what you said, that might linger in someone's heart longer than you expect. Choose silence in those moments. Let it be your shield. Let it be the space where you remember who you really are and what really matters, because the truth is, silence in anger isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about honoring them enough to wait until they can speak with clarity, not chaos. It's about knowing that the best response sometimes is no response at all, at least not yet. And so when you feel that fire rise inside of you, when every fiber of your being wants to lash out and be heard, pause, be silent, not forever, just long enough for wisdom to catch up with emotion. You will thank yourself later, and so will everyone around you. Silence in anger isn't the absence of strength, it's the essence of it. There's something quietly noble about a person who knows when not to speak, especially when they don't yet have all the facts. We live in a world where people rush to speak, fast opinions, instant reactions, judgments formed in seconds and shouted loudly. But if you look closely at the people who rise above the noise, the ones who carry weight when they speak, you'll find a pattern. They don't rush, they wait, they listen, and when they finally do speak, their words mean something. Let me tell you, there's a kind of wisdom that only shows itself in silence, not the silence of indifference, but the silence of a mind that values truth over ego. Because here's the danger: when you speak without knowing the full story, you're not helping, you're guessing. And guesses, especially spoken with confidence, can do real damage. They can mislead others, break trust, and make you appear careless, even if your intentions were good. There's a reason the world respects thinkers, not reactors. When you speak too soon, you might speak out of fear, out of insecurity, or worse, out of misinformation. You might not even realize you're doing it. But the consequences don't wait for your awareness to catch up. You say something out of turn, and suddenly you've drawn lines, created sides, stirred the pot in ways that can't be undone, and all because you didn't wait for the whole truth. I've watched strong, capable people damage their credibility because they let their mouths outrun their minds. One misinformed opinion spoken with certainty can follow you longer than you expect. And the thing is, you don't always get the chance to take it back. Not everything can be patched up with a simple "I didn't know." People remember. They remember who jumped to conclusions, who assumed the worst, who failed to wait. And here's the beautiful part: silence gives you the space to see clearly. When you hold back, when you let others speak first, when you observe rather than insert yourself, what you gain is perspective. You learn more. You catch nuances others miss. You allow people to reveal who they really are without interference. That's where real understanding lies, not in the talking but in the listening. And I'll say this too: there is strength in restraint. There's something powerful about the person who doesn't feel the need to have a say in everything. Not every conversation needs your opinion. Not every argument deserves your voice. Sometimes the greatest influence comes from simply watching the room and choosing your moment carefully. Silence in those moments doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to wait for truth to arrive. People often confuse silence with ignorance, but it's not ignorance, it's patience. It's a sign that you value accuracy more than applause. And when you do speak, people will lean in. Why? Because you haven't wasted their time before. You've earned the right to be heard. And that's a powerful position to be in. Think of the time someone judged you before knowing the full story. Think of how that felt: frustrating, unfair, even painful. Now imagine how often we do that to others without even realizing it. We hear a snippet, a rumor, a side of a story, and suddenly we've got a fully formed opinion. But life isn't lived in black and white. Most of it is gray, complex, layered. And if you want to be someone who walks through the world with integrity, you learn to respect that complexity. You wait, you listen, you hold space for the full picture. And I'll tell you something else: sometimes the story never comes fully. Sometimes you'll never have all the details in those moments. It's even more important: stay quiet to know that not everything needs your comment. Not every event requires your reaction. There's peace in that. And more importantly, the world doesn't need more noise. It needs clarity, and clarity can't be rushed. It comes when we take our time, when we value truth over ego, understanding over judgment. So the next time you feel the urge to speak up when you know you don't have the full story, pause, hold that thought. Let silence be your guide. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you respect the truth enough to wait for it. Because in a world full of voices fighting to be forced, be the one who chooses to be right. There are times in life when words simply won't do. Times when silence, not speech, becomes the most compassionate thing you can offer. We tend to believe that we must always say something, that offering advice, sharing encouragement, or filling the air with positivity is the way to help. But I've learned that there are moments when words, no matter how well intended, fall short, and more often than not, it's in those moments that silence becomes the greatest gift we can give. When someone is grieving, when they've just lost something, they loved a person, dream a part of themselves, they don't need you to fix it. They don't need your interpretation, your explanation, or even your sympathy spoken aloud. They need your presence. They need to know they're not alone in their pain, not with noise, But with quiet, steady human understanding, silence becomes a soft place, to land a space where healing can begin, without pressure, without analysis. I've sat with people who were broken, opened by life, devastated by failure, heartache or fear, and in those moments, I've watched others try to wrap their wounds in words. It'll be okay. They say everything happens for a reason, but those words, while meant to comfort, often miss the mark, not because they're wrong, but because they come too soon. Because they rush in to solve something that isn't ready to be solved. Some pain doesn't want a solution, it wants acknowledgement, and silence does that better than any phrase ever could. It takes strength to sit in that silence with someone. It takes patience to hold space without rushing. But that, my friend, is where connection lives, not in what you say, but in your willingness to simply be there fully, quietly, willingly. And that kind of presence, that quiet, unwavering support, can be life-changing. I've learned that not all discomfort needs to be spoken through. Not every tear needs to be answered with a pep talk. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is to say nothing at all, to sit beside someone and let your silence say what your words can't. I see you. I'm here. You're not alone. And it's not just in moments of grief or hardship. There are times when people feel overwhelmed, confused or lost. They don't need another opinion. They need stillness. They need the kind of quiet that lets them hear their own voice again. When we speak too quickly, we interrupt that process. We make it about our need to help, our urge to guide, rather than their need to feel. You must learn to recognize those moments, the ones when your words will complicate what someone else is trying to untangle, when your advice, no matter how wise, would only add weight in those times. Your silence becomes a sanctuary, a space where someone else can breathe without having to explain themselves, defend their emotions, or process your perspective. Silence, when it's given with presence and care, is not passive. It's not avoidance. It's not empty. It's full of patience, respect, and love. It says, I trust you to find your way. I'm just here beside you while you do. That's a kind of support that doesn't get enough credit in this world, but it matters more than we often realize. And don't forget, sometimes that person in need of silence is you. There will be moments in your life when your own world feels loud, uncertain, and chaotic, and in those moments you must also learn to be silent. Not to suppress your pain, but to honor it. Not to ignore your emotions, but to give them room to unfold without judgment. You don't need to explain your struggle to everyone. You don't owe the world your inner processing. Sometimes the healing begins when you stop talking and simply listen to yourself, to the quiet, to whatever truth is rising in the stillness. So many people are afraid of silence. They feel it quickly, like it's something to be escaped. But silence isn't empty. It's a mirror. It shows us what's real. It reflects what matters. And when used with care, it speaks volumes, more than any string of words ever could. So the next time you find yourself in the presence of someone who's hurting, confused, or simply going through something that doesn't need to be explained, don't feel pressure to say something. Don't reach for the perfect line. Just be there. Be quiet, be present. Because in that stillness, you're giving something far more powerful than advice. You're giving your full, undivided humanity. And that kind of silence changes